Today we are dividing whole numbers, and we're going to do that using the long division algorithm. So our first example, we have a 3-digit number and a 1-digit number. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up. The number I'm dividing into is the dividend. And so I'm going to set that here. What I'm dividing by is the divisor. And that's going to go on the outside here. Now I'm going to just start here on the left, and I'm going to see how many times 4 goes into 2. 4 does not go into 2, so we're going to put a 0 up there, showing it goes in there 0 times. Then I'll move on to the next two values. That makes a 25. 4 goes into 25 6 times without going over. So then I'm going to take 4 times 6. 4 times 6, there's 24. I'm going to put a 0 here for a couple reasons. It's a placeholder so I can subtract while keeping everything in line. It's also showing my understanding of place value because this 6 is in the tens place, so this would be saying 4 times 60 is 240. Now I'm going to subtract to see what's left. And I have 11. 4 goes into 11 2 times. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 left over. So when you first did long division, you might have said 62 with a remainder of 3. Now we're going to write this as a mixed number. So if you recall, when we were working with fractions, we would turn them into mixed numbers by dividing, just like we did here. And we would do that by saying 4 goes into 251, 62 times. How many left over? 3. And we kept that same denominator. 62 3/4. So now, when we divide and we have a remainder, we will be writing those as mixed numbers. Okay, go ahead and pause your video and work on 1, 2, and 3 down here at the bottom. Then you can unpause to check your work. Here's 1, 2, and 3. Okay, flip this over. Now we're going to go through the same process, but instead of a 1-digit number, we'll have a multi-digit number. So here we have 6,084 divided by 12. When you do have larger numbers, it can be helpful to make a list of multiples, 12, 24, 36. Your multiplication chart could be useful in this case. 12 does not go into 6, so I'm going to put a 0. 12 goes into 60, so I'm going to put a 5. That's 12 times 5 is 60. And again, I'm going to put zeros as placeholders, or I'm thinking this is 500. It's in the hundreds place. 12 times 500 is 60 hundreds, or 6,000. I'll subtract. Okay, now I'm just looking at the next blank space, which is an 8. Since 12 does not go into 8, I'm actually going to put a 0 here. Then I'll look at this space, which makes the 84. And 12 goes into 84 7 times. 12 times 7 is 84. So I would have no remainder here. My quotient is 507. Go ahead and pause your video and try 4 and 5. Unpause to check your work. Number 4, I got 23. Number 5, 203. There were 6 left over out of 30, so it simplifies to 1/5. 203 and 1/5. Lastly, we're going to work through a word problem. And this says a swing at an amusement park can seat 64 people. A total of 10,250 people rode the swing today. All the rides were full except for the last ride. How many rides were given and how many people were on the last ride? So the first thing we're going to do is mark up the text. When we have a word problem, we mark the text to mark what's important and the question that we are going to answer in the end. So we need to know that this swing can seat 64 people. Okay? 10,250 people rode the swing today. We have two questions here. I'm going to put a box around those to make sure we answer them in complete sentences. So the first thing we need to do is figure out how many rides were given out of the 10,250 people. So I'm going to take 10,250 and divide that by 64. 64 does not go into 1, and it does not go into 10. 64 does go into 102 just one time. So 64 times 1, that is 64. Now I'm subtracting. Okay, and then I would have 8 carry 3. Okay, the next place value I'm looking at is 385. One thing you could do is make a list of multiples to figure out how many times 64 would go into 385 if we don't know that off the top of our head. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to start with 64. Then I'm going to add another 64. So 64 plus 60, I have 124, plus 4 more is 128. Okay, then I'm going to think 128 plus 60 is 188, plus 4 more, 192. Okay, and again, I'm trying to get close to 385. So 192 plus 60 is 252, plus the 4 more is 256. We're getting closer. Okay, so I'll add 60 more. We're going to be at 316, and then I'll add the 4 more to make 64. 320. Okay, and then 64 more. We're now at 384. So we can see if we were to keep going, we would go beyond 385. So I'm going to stop there, and that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'll put a 6 up here. 64 times 6, we can see over here, is 384. And then I'll subtract. 64 doesn't go into 10, so I'll put a 0 up here. So that means I had 160 with the remainder of 10, or 160 with 10 over 64. Okay, so that means the quotient is 160, 10 over 64. This means that there were 160 full rides. They gave 160 rides with 64 people on each ride. Okay, and there were still 10 people remaining. So there were 161 rides given in total, but the last ride only had 10 people on there.